Hey there, Squirrel Army! Today we are discussing goldfishing in EDH. If you're enjoying the content here, you can join the Squirrel Army by subscribing and turning on the notifications. It keeps the squirrels from eating your nuts. Alright, so we're not talking about MTG goldfish, we're talking about goldfishing in EDH. What is goldfishing? Goldfishing is essentially play testing your deck. Basically just seeing, drawing a hand of 7 cards, shuffling up and drawing a hand of 7, seeing how you would play out your hand and what you would do throughout a turn cycle, making those decisions of figuring out how triggers work and how your deck works, when to play your commander, when to play ramp, when to do something else, when to draw cards, figuring out all the ins and outs of, okay, I sack this thing and then what triggers? Okay, this triggers and then this triggers. What will be the best way for me to resolve these effects? Or will I play this spell and then I have all these effects go off because I'm playing a spell slinger deck or whatever it is. So this triggers, and this triggers. So which way do I want them to sort of resolve and whatnot? It helps you figure out how you can pilot your deck better each time once you get more seasoned with knowing, okay, right, I have Talrand on the field and I have Anigal or Hanigal, however you pronounce his name, the guy who casualty 1s or casualty 2s your spells, basically allowing you to sack creatures to copy those spells. So you want Talrand to trigger first. They trigger both at the same time, but you want to resolve Talrand's trigger first so that you can get that Drake, and then you want Anigal's trigger to go second so that you can go, okay, cool, I have this Drake, I'm going to sacrifice it, and I'm going to copy this spell. So then I'm going to get an additional copy of that spell, get additional effects out of what I am doing. Then it is sort of an art of playtesting and goldfishing your deck because it's hard to know what your opponents are going to do, if they're going to kill your things and whatnot, but it's more about being able to know what your deck does and know how to function your deck and resolve your deck in the right way so that you can be prepared for real games of EDH when you get to them, because it's much easier to just focus on what you're doing and be able to have made your own decisions about what you're going to do and then be able to pilot your deck into a real game of EDH with other players, because once you know, okay, well, this would be the best way for me to resolve this would be the best order for me to cast these spells. Hey, I have 3 or 4 spare mana this turn. If nobody does anything, okay, that I really need to worry about, I'll just, draw some cards with this instant that I've got. Right, cool. And whatnot. So I'll move on from there. Okay, I'll take my turn, and things like that. But if somebody does kind of get a card out there that I might be like, I don't know whether I want you to have that, opponent, type thing, you might be like, okay, well, I have this counterspell. So am I going to save mana for this counterspell? Well, if I can save mana for this counterspell, then I can save mana for this draw card spell. So I can do both kind of at the same time. If nobody really does anything, I can just sit here with my open mana and be like, hey, well, don't cast anything because I might have a counterspell, and people will fear that from blue decks a lot of the time and whatnot, because they know that that's sort of in blue's wheelhouse quite a lot. But then again, they've kind of just got to play the game because, hey, you can't just sit there in fear of the blue player being able to counter stuff, but you've got to be aware of it, and you've just got to go, okay, cool, they could counter this, so let me see or they could counter the next thing I cast, so let me just see what I'm going to do, and whatnot. So that's another thing that you can sort of do, being like, what if I cast this? Being like, would somebody want to counter this? If I was on the other side of, the table, would I want to counter that? Would that be worth me countering? And you can also help yourself make those assessments of what are the key cards in my deck. If this is one of the cards that I go, oh crap, now my deck doesn't really work, from here on out, or if I don't draw another effect that's very similar to this card, then I might be dead in the water. So that might be a card that you go, okay, if this card's shut down, then my game plan might be ruined. So you might want to be able to figure out more ways to protect those said cards and whatnot, or have those ways so that you can, eliminate that problem and eliminate that process of needing more of those sorts of cards by adding more of those sorts of cards. Now, it does not help sometimes when you don't have more extra copies or functional copies of that card. It is a bit more difficult, but again, you do want to have that redundancy sometimes so that you can go, okay, well, I still have 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever it is, 10 or 11 extra copies of this sort of an effect somewhere in my deck, so I'll be just fine if I can find one of those effects. I'll still be able to enact the game plan of which my deck is doing, and move forward if this card is taken out. So it can really help you assess, okay, if my commander dies, is it worth me recasting it? Perhaps not, perhaps it is. It does depend on what my follow-up is. My Omnath deck, I will take this as an example, my 4-color Omnath. Sometimes it's not worth replaying that commander because, well, by the time I recast it, even if it's essentially 0 mana to draw a card and gain 4 life, which it sometimes is, because you get that 4 mana mode, so therefore it sort of replaces itself on that first cast, but on the second cast, it really doesn't. So now you're paying 2 mana to draw a card and gain 4 life. Now, that's not terrible, but it's not great. And after that, it's really bad. You only sort of really would want to do that, or I would really only want to do that, if it is the only play that I have got for the most part. Because especially getting into later game, I do not need that commander very much because I've already got most of my mana sorted out. So I really don't need that commander for the mana. I would only play it if I need to really draw a couple of cards, and maybe if I really, really need to gain a lot of life or some life. Because again, gaining life so efficiently from it most of the time isn't that relevant with that commander, and it's pretty much the worst mode. And then again, like, I would say that the 4 damage to each opponent and Planeswalker mode is pretty meh as well for the most part. The best mode is the 4 mana mode, for the most part, in my opinion at least. That's the mode that you really care about, because you're not going to get that third mode very many times, at least the way that I've kind of built that deck. And the first mode you're always going to get, but it's just not a huge impact on the game of gaining 4 life or whatnot. That's not really what you're there for. You're there to make mana and get ahead. Yes, the fact that it draws you a card, replaces itself is nice. If you have some other card draw effects, sometimes that's okay as well, like Beast Whisperer, etc. But certainly, again, getting back to the point, it gets back to what is my next play, per se, type deal. Like, okay, given the state of this, what I'm doing, perhaps if my commander has died by this point, because probably it will die once or twice in a game, would it be worth me recasting my commander? How much mana is my commander? Is my commander a 2 mana commander? Is my commander a 1 mana commander normally? Like, now it's only 3 mana. Well, that's still probably okay, even though, maybe I don't get a huge effect out of it or whatnot this turn or whatever it is. Again, you're making all those judgment calls on, based on what I've got in hand, what I've got on field, what would be the next best thing for me to do. And it is hard to decide what would realistically happen, because again, you never know what your opponents are going to do. But if you can assess which cards are your most important cards, okay, what if this card was gone now in the next turn? when would it be the most hurtful to me? Because probably that's when it's going to be gone by, is when you need it the most, because your opponents will know, hey, you're about to do something crazy here or whatnot. It seems like this is starting to become a thing. We need to deal with it before it becomes a really big thing and things like that. So you need to know, okay, I've done some stuff with this card, so it's on people's radar now, really. So I really need to protect it this next turn. So I need to leave up counterspell mana, or I need to leave up protection or whatnot, these sorts of things, so that I can protect it. And, perhaps no one draws the answer, or perhaps no one has the answer in hand or whatnot. Then, hey, well, I'll just draw some more cards because, hey, well, that's, still a fairly good option, you know, and perhaps that's maybe what somebody else was waiting for. Sometimes you don't know this. You go, oh, well, cool. No one did anything, so I'll just draw some cards. Then somebody's like, you're tapped out. Well, now I'm going to kill your thing. And then you're like, no, now I'm tapped out, so now I can't respond with my counter spell. So that's why, like, as I say, like, free counter spells are expensive counter spells, but also good counter spells. But anyway, but yeah, that is what goldfishing is. It is playtesting your deck to see what your deck does, where your weaknesses are, what you should do in given situations, so that you can, know what you're going to do in game, and you don't really have to wait a minute. This does this and this does that. There's always going to be those situations sometimes where you go, oh, wait, these 2 or 3 cards actually work really well together, and I didn't realize that they would actually work in this manner together sometimes, because you might not have ever seen these 2 or 3 cards working together in the manner that you've just drawn them. Because again, hey, if you haven't got a whole lot of tutors, there's a lot of randomness that kind of happens when you play your decks, because you're just going to get whatever you happen to draw, and given whatever you can draw, hey, wow, these 2 or 3 cards, I've never actually seen them all together on the field, and they actually do some interesting things together. But hey, that is what it is. But again, you should know for the most part, okay, looking at my deck, what all works together. Why have I got all of these cards? Because they work with these cards. Oh, there's only actually 5 of these cards that pay me off for playing all these spells, and my commander doesn't even pay me off for playing all of these spells. So why don't I have a commander that actually pays me off for playing all of these things and whatnot, so that I can actually get that in my command zone and always get the benefit off of it, and always know I'm going to have access to it, and then I don't need to have as many of these other payoffs in my deck, perhaps, that really do that thing. But hey, it's always different for every single deck and whatnot, and every different synergy and everyone's different tastes and whatnot. But hey, as I say, you guys can let me know what you think. Do you guys goldfish very much? I goldfish a very little. I think it's one of those things that a lot more quote unquote more competitive people to sort of tend to do. But I like to do it just so I know, okay, how can I work with what I'm doing? What happens here? What triggers? Right. What am I doing? How should I work this out? What's the best thing for me to do? Because again, I don't want to be sat there and people being like, oh, you don't even know how you're playing your own deck and things like that. Because that's kind of that embarrassing moment or whatnot. Sometimes it's like that, or it gets complicated, or you're taking too long with your turn, hurry up, and things like that. But again, some people need to chill the F down and be patient as well. But hey, it is what it is. But you should still know, okay, cool. Right, what I'm doing is this. Right, what I'm doing is that. This is my plan. This is where I'm going. Hey, if that plan's out of the window, I'll still do this, or I'll still do that. Right, what else can I do, etc. But anyway, guys, as I said, let me know what you guys think about all of this sort of stuff. Write them down there in those comments. I'll try to get a response to you as much as I can. But yeah, if I don't see you down there, I'll see you in the next one.